become aware of it is either you get symptomatic and you figure out that you're becoming ill from these devices that are in your pocket and right in front of you, and also with these RF or radio frequency detectors or meters that we have that have sound and a display of the readings. You need to pay attention to what's going on with the device right in your hand.
Okay, so besides the device, which we need to pay attention to, you mentioned in the Building Biology 5G course that there was also, with 5G, going to be the need for possibly antennas on the home or on the windowsills, some sort of receiving equipment, right on your windowsill. Can you tell us about that? What's the extent of that? Is everybody going to need something on their windowsill?
Depends on whether you sign up for the service. So, for instance, the cell companies, the four cell carriers in America, Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, are making decisions as to how they're going to get into this. And they're all going to be doing what they call mobile 5G, which will be adding 5G antennas and transmission capabilities into the existing 4G phones. So it'll be a hybrid 4G, 5G with two sets of antennas of different sizes because of the wavelengths. This is all for data, by the way. The voice and text is not involved in 5G. That's going to be handled by 3G, which is being phased out, and parts of 4G. But it's the data that is driving this whole 5G antenna densification that you mentioned and that we're going to be talking about. There have been three changes that I've already mentioned in the last decade. 4G LTE, then the Advanced and the Advanced Pro, increasing the speed, and then using technologies. I'll just read them. Carrier aggregation, Advanced MIMO, or multiple in, multiple out. Massive MIMO is already here now with the Advanced Pro for the last 2 years. And then 256 QAM, which is quadrature amplitude modulation, which is a modulation technology that speeds up how much packets of data can go through in the same airspace or same frequency. And even some other enhancements that are all making 4G LTE faster than it used to be in the same frequencies that we have. And that's the backbone. The whole 5G era or decade is using 4G LTE as its backbone.
The voice is going to be going over what?
Voice has always been 2G, 3G. 2G has been phased out already, and 3G is still there, or 2G is on its way out, and 3G will soon be discontinued.
So 4G will take over the voice calls?
Voice and data don't need a lot of bandwidth. It's getting clearer, and all of this involves automation and lower latency, and it's easy to manage and improve voice and text. It's the data that is what this all involves, and that is going from just being able to get on websites to streaming audio to streaming video to having video in HD, which a lot of people are saying, why do you need that for a little phone when you know the enhancement or the clarity of the picture can't be noticed on such a small screen? But anyway,
it raises the question of, is it really worth it to put up all these antennas so that we can have better videos?
The industry thinks so.
I think the video content is the largest driver of growth in traffic on the internet, and so now we want to expand into these virtual reality, augmented reality, and be able to stream movies. Is that convenience? Is that really worth the higher risk to people in their homes from these antennas? And also, often overlooked, but you mentioned in the report as well, is the energy impacts, the energy utilization for all of these antennas. So I'm wondering if you could talk to the energy utilization, but also just your own personal opinion of, does this trajectory make good sense, or are there other ways that we should be designing our communications infrastructure that would be just as good, if not better?
Well, on the one hand, the antenna manufacturers that I spoke to at the conference last September told me that the new 5G antennas really don't use a lot of energy. In fact, what people need to understand is that the 5G portion of the transmitter on small cell antennas now that are coming and are being deployed in neighborhoods are not always on, spraying the neighborhood, or 120 degrees from 60 degrees to the right and 60 degrees from the left from a central beam. But that happens with 4G, and you can measure that with any of the RF meters that we have. But that's not what happens with the 5G, in the beamformed signal that's above 20 gigahertz. That's on demand. It sits there on standby, idle, not transmitting until a user's device out in front of it in a house or with a passerby or someone in a car going by requests it. And another thing, 5G signals above 20 gigahertz are having terrible performance in the field in tests when the cell phone is moving. It's only useful when the cell phone is still and not moving. And then you get the download. And the minute you start moving, you're kicked back to 4G. See, because the phone has the capability in these new phones that are coming out that have the 4G, 5G, and in trials that they've been doing, they didn't have very good, not a very good experience with AT&T and Verizon in Chicago and Minneapolis when they did tests of users going around in the city where they had already installed these 5G super 20 gigahertz millimeter band transmitters. They were kicked back to 4G quite often when they were moving.
So in terms of somebody wanting to buy a new phone right now, would you tell them don't buy a 5G-enabled phone? Is that going to be the safer avenue for the future?
Yes, for the foreseeable future, for the near future. I mean, down the road, they're all going to come with 5G embedded in them. Here's something that people need to realize. When you're in your home, these phones have been programmed for years now with the hybrid 4G and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capabilities that all phones now have and have had for some years. Every phone has 5 different antennas with different technologies, and you're switched from one thing to another depending on the coverage, depending on the connection. And these phones monitor the connection, and the whole goal is to keep the connection as good a quality connection as possible, so you're satisfied with the service you have with whatever company you're with, so you won't switch when you have the ability to get out of your contract and go somewhere else. They want to keep you as a customer. So to do that, they make sure that the technology keeps the quality good. All right, so the average techie, the average person, not the electrically sensitive community like us, who know about this, but the average person out there, which is 95% of the population, they have Wi-Fi networks in their home. And so these phones, for years now and going forward, are programmed to go first to the Wi-Fi network if there is one, if you're connected to it. If you have the password to your own network or you go to Starbucks and you get the password while you're there, you're connected to the Wi-Fi first for all data. So if you're Joe Techie and you live in a house and you've got your cell phone on and that's the only thing and you're not even using your computer anymore, you're using your cell phone for everything, for email, for web surfing, for telephoning, and so on. You don't have a landline. You do everything on your phone or your tablet. And so that's going to go to your Wi-Fi network for all your data, all your web browsing and all that stuff. All right? And now if your friend comes over and he doesn't have your password and he wants to get on his phone to check a movie, or whatever, then he's going to go first to the 4G tower that's down the street with cellular data. Now, if there's a small cell antenna in front of that house or a couple of houses down with 5G in it and he has a 5G phone, he will be connected. He'll send out a request to connect, and he'll connect to that 5G transmitter, which will then send a beamform signal that's 2 to 15 degrees wide, not 120 degrees wide like the always-on 4G antenna. It's an on-demand 2 to 15 degree wide beamform signal that will penetrate through that guy's wall and then connect to his phone, but only if he's stationary. And the minute he walks around, he's going to be thrown back to the 4G antenna that's on the same small cell antenna in that neighborhood, or the macro 4G antenna that's down the street that's been there for years. And if you're electrically sensitive and you live 2 doors down, you're not going to get that 5G signal going into your house as long as you don't call for it. So just don't get a phone that's 5G capable.
With a lot of other people that have cell phones, they're going to be beams coming from all directions.
Well, that's true. Now here's an interesting thought. A lot of electrically sensitive people don't have Wi-Fi in their house. I mean, they have routers, but they're hardwired. We teach them how to turn the Wi-Fi off, as you know. And so there's no Wi-Fi in the house. And yet they still use their cell phones. I can't understand why so many electrically sensitive people still use cell phones, but they do. And so if they use a cell phone and then they don't have a Wi-Fi network, then they're going to be going to the outside 4G tower. And if they have a new small cell antenna somewhere on the block, and their phone has a 4G, 5G capability, that 5G will kick on if they're stationary, and will pull that dreaded beamform signal that we want to try and avoid right into their phone, right into their home, and right into their body. or their husband or their son who's on their phone if the Wi-Fi is off.
Yeah, extremely important for people to understand, and it may mean that more and more people who have cell phones might want to rig it up with adapters so while one is home, one can use it on the Ethernet.
Yes, you can do that with iPhones and iPads. We have Lightning to Ethernet adapters, and on my website, if you go to the Safer Use of Computers page, you can see that in the radio frequency section, and also on EMF products and order codes. Then click on the Amazon link, and you can see in there, you can order. I have one that's grounded. You want it to be grounded so that all your Ethernet cable is grounded and shielded. It has metal ends, and the adapter, it has the metal tabs on the sides where you slide in the end of the Ethernet cable, and also an Ethernet grounding adapter kit at the other end where it plugs into the Ethernet jack in the wall or a network adapter. That needs to be grounded to a ground in the plug so that you don't get high electric fields coming from the phone or tablet or laptop that's in your hand. That's a whole other part of this.
I want to get into something regarding exposures that you mentioned in this report, where you were talking about watts and power density, and you gave the example of if someone has a flashlight, that it's still got the same wattage. If you have the beam going out to make a bigger circle, say where you're beaming it, or a smaller circle, either way. If it's going to be bigger, it's going to be diffuse, and if it's smaller and more intense, like in these beams, perhaps, it's going to be much more biologically effective. And so what do we need to know? Would people make the argument that, these frequencies are so low intensity, there's no power, it's low power, it's going to be better because there are many of the antennas on the utility poles in there.
No.
So low power,
No.
We shouldn't care. So can you please set us straight on that?
Okay, and first I want to give credit to Larry Gust, our president of our board, and one of the principal teachers of the electromagnetic radiation seminars, because he put that section in there that you just referred to into our course on the flashlight analogy. What he's trying to point out there is that if you have the same amount of power but focused into more of a direct beam, I mean, that is more harmful because, again, when you're in the millimeter band, just because of the physics of it, when you're above 20 gigahertz, those signals do not penetrate through just wood or brick or tree leaves or even water molecules if it's raining. It's just like with satellite TV. When it's raining or snowing, you don't get a good picture. It pixelates because it's blocked. And you can't put the satellite dish in an attic because there's a roof over it, just shingles and plywood. You have to have that on the roof with a clear shot to the satellite up there with no trees in the way. Well, in the same way, whenever you're transmitting cellular data signals with these 5G, super 20 gigahertz signals that are going to be beamformed, they have to be beamformed through 64 antennas that are all focusing. Each one of them is focusing, but it's all coordinated through automation, through a computer inside the transmitter that focuses the beams from 64 antennas into one beam. And you can do that with multiple users at the same time. And if there are not multiple people out there calling for the connection, then what I learned at the trade show, was that then the same phone is going to get multiple beams directed at it, not just one, but multiple narrow beams. And the guy said, it just enhances your connection and your download speed will be even faster. And he was happy about that, not thinking about the health. They don't think about the health aspects of this at all. So this is how these super 20 gigahertz millimeter band frequencies get through the wall. We can block it, so that's one part of it. The other part of it is the 4G component. What I understand from the activists that I spoke with and the engineers that I spoke with who are contributors to this article or this online course is that what the industry has been wanting to do for decades is to, or at least for the last 10 or 20 years, is to get more 4G antennas on the small cells in addition to the existing 300,000 macro cell tower network that they have around the country that are spaced 1.5 miles apart. Those antennas can geolocate a phone down to about 50 feet, but that's not good enough. They want to enhance that and get it down closer to to geolocate the phone to 3 feet, and that's what they could do with additional 4G LTE transmitters on every block. and in urban areas. So you're going to have urban areas where it's all going to be quite dense,